stimulus is, of course, still being debated in Washington. And part of that stimulus, the Paycheck Protection Act. Now, it is expiring on August 8th. We want to bring into the program now someone who has had intimate experience with the PPP. That is Randall Leach. He is Beneficial State Bank CEO. He's joining us from Portland, Oregon. His bank has processed quite a few of these PPP loans. And so he has seen firsthand what perhaps needs to happen if indeed Congress gets this done in the next tranche or the next version, if you will. Randall, what do you think needs to be the first priority here? Besides just getting the thing in there, what needs to be in the next version of PPP?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me this morning. So PPP did a lot of things well, but there were obviously a tremendous amount of challenges with the rollout. Whatever the changes are, need to be really clear up front so that the banks can execute and then the market knows what to expect. What we saw, with the initial rollout is that, fundamental aspects of it were not available day one. So everybody was learning as they went. And many applicants, applied not knowing how it was actually going to work and if they needed to forgive the money or not, or if the money was going to be forgiven or not. So what we saw was that, when the forgiveness rules came out, they were far different than what folks had expected. And so that really curtailed demand. We saw applications just dry up to a trickle. And whereas before, we had taken in over 1,300 applications in just a couple of weeks. So for the next round, first, it has to be clear guidance, exactly how it's going to work. I think the amounts for each applicant should be, potentially larger with longer terms to be able to repay, so that there's not a cliff event after 2 or 5 years, which it's both now for some, depending on when what period people applied. There's
Randall?
also, yeah.
Randall, if I could just interrupt you, because this discussion of PPP, without Congress extending PPP or adding to it, what's going to happen to lending? We're seeing that despite interest rates being so low and there being a lot of cash out there, banks seem to be not lending.
Well, the demand for sort of conventional regular business has slowed dramatically. There are still businesses that are actually thriving and need growth capital, including debt capital. But most businesses are trying to hang on and trying to navigate this, these treacherous waters right now. And so they need more relief. So PPP was always one part of that, but it was never a holistic solution, right? I mean, it really helped bring down and flatten the curve of unemployment, but it didn't solve businesses' problem of getting them back up on their feet, getting them positioned for the long haul for recovery. It was a stopgap measure to prevent unemployment from getting worse. And businesses and workers benefited to a degree from that. But the program was flawed in its delivery. So it didn't reach as far, and it certainly didn't reach the pockets that needed it most, like micro businesses, women and minority-owned businesses. They were left behind by the historical banking system, and the banking system was not able to get the funds to those populations that needed it most. So this.
And Randall, as we talk about those populations and those entrepreneurs needing money, the PPP program seems to be keeping alive zombie companies. We had a guest on earlier this week, pointed out that 20% of at least the publicly traded companies out there are being supported by some of the policies at the Fed and in Congress.
Well, I didn't see that episode, but yeah, it definitely went to larger corporations. It went to businesses that may not have a shot at restarting. And again, I think, the public policy aim of it was to reduce unemployment, and it worked to a degree. But we saw the worst unemployment numbers that we've seen in history, and how rapidly that escalated. And the contraction GDP last quarter just shows that how big the problem was to try and solve. And it helped mitigate a little bit, but it didn't solve the complete economic problem, because we're still in the pandemic. And it certainly didn't solve the business's actual problems of, hey, how do I keep my employees? How do I restart? How do I actually have enough capital to, cover the expenses that when my business was closed? How do I get my restart capital? And then how do I invest for the future? All those problems hadn't been solved by PPP in its first iteration. And yes, some tweaks will help it for sure, but it's not going to solve everything. So I think this next round of legislation, yes, they should make some changes to PPP. There's 130 billion or so, something like that, that's still untapped because the businesses that took it down, they're not sure if they're actually going to get it forgiven or not. So they're not actually using all of it yet. Some absolutely are. Some, it's been a lifeline that they grabbed and they're putting to work. But others took it and they're not sure what the rules are until just recently, and so they're not able to deploy it effectively. So I wouldn't call those zombies. They're stuck. They're still asking for help. They still need help, and they are the engine of this economy that we need to help so that they can go on. And same thing with the unemployed, right? So we have this huge level of unemployment, and Congress is fussing around trying to minimize the amount of support that they give to unemployed workers. These are workers that are struggling. We need to help support them by continuing the unemployment payments of 600, probably even increase it for a little bit because the workforce is devastated. So there's just a lot of things that need to be more of a holistic solution. The stimulus checks. We need to be having legislation that helps us address the rental crisis that's in front of us. All these things have to happen together to give the businesses an environment to be able to come back and have business to come back to, right? So that they have a chance to, have somebody to sell their products and services to. Because right now that demand has dried up. So even if you bring your employees back, you may not have the business to support them.
There is an enormous amount at stake, Randall. Thank you so much for giving us your perspective on from the small businesses that you all deal with every day. Randall Leach is the CEO of Beneficial State Bank. Thanks again.
Thank you.